All right, this is the video for before we start chapter 5. So this is just, we'll call this the pre-5-1 video. And it's just the basic exponent properties that you should have learned all of these in Algebra 1, but we're just kind of reviewing them before we dive head deep into chapter 5, which you will have to be a pro at them. Okay, so if we look at example 1 here, when I have the same base but differing exponents, okay, when we're talking about a fraction, what we do is we would subtract the exponent of the numerator minus the exponent of the denominator. So this would really just turn to a to the 5th. Okay, over here, anytime we have a negative exponent, we can turn it positive by doing 1 over that. Okay, so if it's in the numerator, we can put it in the denominator. But if it's in the denominator, like if this was 1 over c to the negative 4th, we could just move it to the numerator and it would be positive, or just c to the 4th. Okay, but this answer here is 1 over c to the 4th. Okay, if we look at number 2, okay, this is one of the biggest missed problems. Anytime you have parentheses and exponent outside, both of these terms need this exponent. Okay, so this is just x to the 5th times y to the 5th. Okay, and anything to the first power is just itself, so this is just d. All right, so let's look at these next two. Okay, so when we're multiplying, and once again we have the same base but different exponents, okay, we will add the exponents. Okay, so this would just be f to the 13th power. Okay, and once again, like we just did, we would take this exponent and put them towards both of these. So this would be like h squared to the 6th times j to the 3rd to the 6th. And then if we have a power and then an exponent after that, we would multiply these. So this would be h to the 2 times 6 times j to the 3 times 6, or just h to the 12th, j to the 18th. Okay, back down here, the same thing as what we just did. So 5g to the 5th, to the 3rd power, we would multiply those, so it would be g to the 5 times 3, which would be g to the 15th. And then right here, notice both of these are negative, so we're going to flip them and make them positive. So this would just be z to the positive 4 on top and y to the positive 6 on bottom, and that is all we can simplify that. All right, so let's look at these level 2 problems. These are a little more difficult. Okay, so once again, we have an exponent in parentheses and then a power, so this would just be x to the 3 times 5 times x to the 2 times 8. So x to the 15th times x to the 16th. And when we're multiplying, we have the same base but different exponents. This is when we would add them. 15 plus 16 is 31. So my final answer would be x to the 31 power. Okay, let's look at 2 down here. Okay, when we do these, I like to separate them. So like I like to do b to the 5th over b times c over c to the 7th times d squared over d to the 0, and just kind of look at them separately and then put them all together. You don't have to by any means, but I find it easier. So if we subtract these, 5 minus, think of this as b to the 1st. This is just b to the 4th power. Okay, 1 minus 7 is c to the negative 6, which would just be 1 over c to the 6th. And guys, anything to the 0 power is just 1. Okay, so this would just be times d squared, and if you like it better, you can put these over 1 if you'd like. Okay, so when we're all said and done, on top would have b to the 4th d squared over just c to the 6th. There is our final answer. All right, let's look at 3. Okay, so our numerator's fine. What we need to do is get this denominator, which is 4h to the 5th squared, and simplify it. So I'm just going to look at this for now. Okay, so remember, anytime we have that, this square applies to both h to the 5th and to the 4th. So this is just 4 squared times h to the 5th squared. Okay, and 4 squared we know 16 times h to the 5 to the 2nd is h to the 5 times 2, which is just 16h to the 10th. Okay, so that's my denominator. So if I go back here, this is going to equal h over 16h to the 10th. Okay, and if you want to think of this as 1, anytime we have top and bottom, we're going to subtract them. So 1 minus 10 is negative 9. So it would stay on bottom. So this is just 1 over 16h to the 9th power. Okay, last one on these level 2. Okay, so remember when you see something like this negative 5 power, because it's not parentheses, it only applies to the y. It doesn't apply to the whole thing, only the y. If it applied to everything, these would be in parentheses. Okay, so this is just 8x, and remember when we have a negative, we take it to the bottom. So y to the 5th, that would be my final answer. All right, let's look at these level 3 problems. Okay, these are even a little bit harder. Okay, so all these are to the 3rd power. So this would be like f cubed to the 3rd times g to the negative 2 to the 3rd times, and these are all to the 1st, so just f to the 7th, g to the 12th, h. Okay, so remember, if we have an exponent and then another exponent, we multiply those. So 3 times 3 is 9. So f to the 9th times g to the negative 6th times f to the 7th, g to the 12th, h. Okay, key to these guys is going step by step. Okay, so this negative 6 needs to go to the bottom. So f to the 9th times f to the 7th times g to the 12th times h over g to the 6th. Okay, now f to the 9th times f to the 7th, we will add these. So 9 plus 7 is 16. So I'd get f to the 16th times, well, g to the 12th over g to the 6th, we would subtract those exponents. So it's just g to the 6th. And we don't have anything to do with our h because that's the only h. So this should be your final answer. All right, let's look at 2 here. Okay, so remember this 2, since these are all in parentheses, it applies to every term in here. So this is just 3 to the 2nd power times j to the 4th to the 2nd power over 6 to the 2nd power times k to the 6th to the 2nd power. Okay, well 3 squared, guys, is 9 times j to the, when I have a power and then raised to another power, we multiply those. So 4 times 8, or 4 times 2 is 8. Over, well 6 squared is 36. And then once again, we multiply these, so that's k to the 12th. Okay, one last thing we could do. 9 over 36 reduces to 1 over 4. So just 1 times j to the 8th over 4k squared. And if we wanted to make it look more proper, we would just do j to the 8th over 4k to the 12th. All right, let's look at 3. Now remember, this 2 goes to all of these terms, okay? So it would be negative x to the 3rd squared times y to the 4th squared. Okay, well negative x, anything to the squared power, guys, is going to turn that to be a positive, okay? So then you just need to do x to the 3rd to the 2nd. Remember, we multiply these, so this is just positive x to the 6th times 4 times 2 is 8, so y to the 8th, okay? And if you didn't want this multiply in between, you could just do x to the 6th, y to the 8th. That's okay too. Either one of those would work for me. All right, let's do one last one, okay? So once again, this exponent goes to both the b term and the c term. Okay, so this would be like negative b to the 7th to the 5th power times c to the negative 3rd to the 5th power. And a power to a power, we multiply. Now, a negative to an odd power stays a negative. Okay, so this is just negative b to the 7 times 5 is 35 times c to the negative 3rd to the 5th is c to the negative 15th. Okay, and remember, anytime we have a negative exponent, it'll go to the other end. So right now it's in the numerator, we'll put it in the denominator. So negative b to the 35th over c to the 15th should be our final answer.